Let's see. Actually, we will go out to the audience here. You all have sat through a masterpiece. Does anyone out there have a question before I leave off the stage? Yes, you in the front row. Shout it out.
Stan. I know a lot of us here probably read, Spendak's book when we were younger. This is not on. Okay. My mother actually wouldn't let me read it, but my sister stuck me a copy because my mom said I'd be afraid of it. But when you set out, to make this movie, did you think you were decidedly not making a children's movie, or you were making a children's movie, or how did you think about those things?
I don't know if I knew exactly clearly, but I think not looking back at it, my intention was always to make a movie about what it felt like to be 9 years old, and just to try and do that as true as possible, and knowing that it would be like in video stores, it would be on the shelf under children's movies, but not that was like I didn't set out to do that. We didn't really ever talk about it that way or think about it that way.
Yes.
You've worked with Lance Accord in every movie that you've done, and I love all this stuff in Sofia Coppola's movies. I was just wondering, what's the greatest thing about working with him, and where did you guys meet? I guess.
He's asking about Lance Accord, the cinematographer here, who shot. He's done all my movies, being Demotic adaptation, and this, and Lost in Translation, and Marie Antoinette, and Buffalo '66. And I met him. He through some friends when I was first starting to direct music videos, and we had mutual friends, and there's this art gallery in New York on the Lower East Side on Ludlow Street, and there was this little hole in the wall sort of homemade art gallery that was had a lot of skateboarders art and stuff like that, and he hung out there, and I met him through that scene, and he was just started getting into film, and I was just getting into film, and I don't know. He's a real he's a great collaborator in that he is when filmmaking can be really stressful and you got to move on. Everything's about compromising, and he's sort of always he's like a daydreamer. He's kind of blocks all that out and just is always about what the possibilities are, and so he sort of is a great balance and sort of battler of those, when we have, our producers telling us we have to, move on, or we have to settle for some location we don't want, or whatever it is. Yes.
Well, first question is to make sure my real one is relevant. I take it that CGI was limited to mostly the faces for Where the Wild Things. Most of them were actually suits and puppeteers, yeah?
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges directing something like that? Have you ever worked in that kind of circumstance before? How's it different than just directing other actors?
Because if they don't like your direction, they'll eat you, and that's scary. It was a weird way to make a movie for sure. Just on simple things like how do you frame a shot where you have somebody that's 4 feet tall and somebody that's 12 feet tall and they're talking to each other. But it was definitely the idea was, we just wanted to feel spontaneous and alive and surprising.
It was, hello. It was different as far as I'm concerned. Spike was much more specific with the suit performers. They were great actors, mostly Australian actors, in the suits, and they hadn't performed they weren't professional suit performers. What? Anyway, no, so I think that ordinarily Spike doesn't really have that much doesn't really micromanage a performance. He's specific about what he likes and will say if it's not going the right way according to what he wants. But with the suits, there's the slightest move can be perceived as over or stereotypically suit performing, kind of, it can get real kind of cartoony. And Spike really wanted the performances to be very natural. So he had to be really careful about overseeing their slightest gestures and stuff.
I have a question to take off on, I mean, just to like continue on this subject. And this might be a loaded question, or I might be steering the audience in this one. Who would, like, I just thought, like, and I'll ask you guys, would you rather hug a CG wild thing or a real wild thing? Hands for CG? Real? Okay, we have about 8 people.
Wow.
All right. So no, that was like, we wanted it to be real, and we wanted them to be there, and to, you know, like, to be, you know, we wanted that sort of the danger of Max being there with these creatures and on these real locations, and
yeah, you know, I don't think we would have grown as we kind of loved all of these guys and became very protective of them, and each one was a separate entity, I think, right? I mean, it was a separate being, and if they were CGI, I don't think we would have cared about them. You know.
they wouldn't have been scary either. You couldn't have like eaten us.
Yeah.
Did you do any tests with